So welcome everybody. I think everybody knows one another on this call. If you, so I think, you can, some of you have already introduced yourself in case there are faces that you don't know. I'm Florence Martin, Director of Vatican Network, together with Caroline Rhodes here,
Hi, I'm
the
Caroline.
co-convener from Lumos, and Becky Smith, who's also our co-convener, is going to be joining us, but apologizes because she's finishing, she's had another meeting that was unfortunately not scheduled before, but she's going to come in as soon as she can into this meeting. So today, a lot of us, and I think a lot of you are catching up, September, early September in particular. It's such a busy period for advocacy, and we're all catching up either because we've been on leave or because there are so many meetings happening right now, both in relation to what's happening in, of course, at the UNGA, which Mara is going to talk a little bit about, but also what's happening in other fora, including, which we're going to talk about, including preparation for the VAC global meeting. There's a lot of regional advocacy work happening as well. And some colleagues have said they will be joining, so hopefully they'll be able to come in and update on that. And then a few other things to put on the agenda, and then asking you to also share anything that we're not aware of, we haven't put up there, that you're involved in, which you think might be really useful for others to hear about in terms of what's happening on policy and advocacy on children's care. So welcome, really great to see your faces. I hope you've managed to have a bit of a break. As Caroline said, probably we're all a bit shell-shocked. I know I am coming back. The first thing, Chris, that we wanted to talk about the agenda, and Mary very kindly from Hope and Homes has agreed to kind of help us understand, update us on what's been happening with the Summit of the Future, but also with this series of dialogues that Hope and Home for Children are proposing. So Mary, over to you.
Thank you very much, Florence. Hi, colleagues. I did have a very short PowerPoint, just visual aid. I don't know if I'm able to share this.
Of course you are.
Sorry,
Let me stop sharing.
Thank you. I hope everybody's well and coming back from a relaxing holiday. I promise I'll be much briefer in terms of the context of the SDGs than I was last time. But let me start. Again, very sorry, my computer is difficult today. So I hope you're starting to see something uploading.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So the Summit of the Future, for those of you that aren't too up to date on what it is this year's big SDG Sustainable Development Goals Summit on the back of the UNGA. It's going to take place. There's going to be a couple of days just before the summit that are called the Action Days. That's going to take place on 20th and 21st of September in New York. And there's going to be particularly on the Friday a whole afternoon about youth and a little bit children. So a lot of it is online. I can share the link on the action days a bit later. And on 22nd, 23rd of September, the actual summit. This is the big intergovernmental meeting that takes place to, one, take stock on the progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, and two, to commit to adopt some key policy documents on a better multilateral system to secure a better future for future generations. So again, future is really the operative word for this specific summit, as well as the concept of future generations, which I can mention later, but we've struggled with a little bit because it really didn't include many considerations on children. You will be able, I believe, to capture, to attend some of the public-facing moments of the Summit of the Future on the UN web stream website. So I've put the link here, but I can also put that in the chat later. If anybody by any chance is in New York, let us know. We will have from Hope and Homes one representative there, our programs director, international programs director, and it may be very good to connect. Importantly, policy-wise, the summit is going to have three main documents that will be adopted for sort of the commitments of the global leaders towards the future. Really, there's two of them that are of interest for us. The main one being the Pact for the Future, a very action-oriented and multi-purpose, multi-topics policy document, going from anywhere from peace and security, space exploration to the green transition. Part of this will have a chapter on children and young and youth. Really, the children, the chapter focuses specifically on youth a lot. We have tried, and a number of organizations that we are in touch with have tried to steer the focus, or at least to give a proper place to children within the pact, with mixed results, to be honest. There's a few interesting mentions, but we certainly don't think it's been enough, and we don't think that children's rights were at the forefront of world leaders in the drafting of the Pact for the Future. And annexed to the pact, there's going to be a declaration on future generations, which is a lot more, I think, an aspirational document, less action oriented, a lot shorter, and also really, I think that there's been a bit of a missed a missed opportunity on world leaders' part to really capture that we need to start securing the rights of children now and future children, and we really don't have much of that in the Declaration on Future Generations. I'll share the links to the latest drafts later in the chat box as well, just to say that in terms of the global child rights community, there's been very little united action, but not really, not at all. There's a impact coalition on children's rights and participation, which was meant to be an NGO, but also academia, even, you know, if they wanted to join businesses, like a stakeholder groups, but that really was focused on supporting the rights of children. That was formed last May at the occasion of the Civil Society Conference preparing the Summit of the Future. Unfortunately, I think the terms of working of the Impact Coalition may not have been defined very, very early on. So there's been a little bit of communication sharing, but not much joint action yet. We hear that there may be an event organized by the Impact Coalition in one of the action days, 20th, 21st, but we've not heard much back from on that end. And then just to say, like I spent a lot of time explaining in my last presentation, the Summit of the Future is just one big moment in the wider SDGs process. And there's going to be very shortly a number of others that we can look towards to learn from the experience of the Summit of the Future and maybe come in with a more united front to influence decision makers. One of them, as I mentioned in my presentation here, being the World Social Summit that's going to take place in November 2025. It's the second edition. The first one took place 30 years ago, and it may actually be a better opportunity to really look at social rights for children. So we'll look forward to working on this. Bringing me to sort of what Hope and Homes has started working on around the summit, but also an entry point to the wider SDGs framework. As part of our preparation for the Nairobi conference already in May, we started thinking of what could be our key demands to make sure that the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Agenda, encompasses childcare reform within it, and what key steps can we demand world leaders to take to make sure that in the SDGs, there is a space for fighting child institutionalization and supporting childcare reform. These 5 steps, so that have become sort of our initial key demands for the wider SDGs context, are here in this slide. So the first one, very overarching, ultimately we've tried to go from the very general to a bit more the how to get there, the more concrete. So very generally, we urge world leaders to, in the context of the SDGs, condemn child institutionalization in the same way that the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Agenda, have made, for instance, some great commitments toward supporting equal education for all, gender rights, fighting poverty, reducing inequality. We'd like ultimately for there to be a place for combating child institutionalization. And we think in the grand scheme of things, it would make a lot of sense to also comprise children deprived of families as a whole. Second one, a little more focused on the how, pursue an inclusive approach to social protection to prevent family separation and build community resilience. The third one, but obviously very, very central, commit to systemic national child protection and care reform. Fourth key ask, set data collection mechanisms, evidence-based goals, and monitoring and evaluation systems to assess progress. I'll mention that in a bit, but one of the critical gaps, I would say, in the current SDGs framework is that there is no statistical goals around children deprived of family care, children in institutions. And five, very important as well, and maybe part of the way of working, ensuring the meaningful consultation of and accountability to children with care experience. I have to apologize because in this, we slightly edited these 5 demands. These are from the Nairobi conference. We added to committing to systemic national child protection and care reform, a sentence on through financing mechanisms, through sustained financing mechanisms, including global financing mechanisms. So really to enshrine that there is no reform without attaching some funding to it. So these are the 5, again, initial asks. We anticipate that they may evolve throughout our own understanding of the SDGs and as the conversation on the SDGs evolve as well. But this is where we're at as of September 2024. And now on to our policy dialogue series. As you mentioned, Florence, what we have, I think, in terms of the wider SDGs conversation is it's extremely top line. There's a number of very important issues that are facing the humanity now and in the future. And we want to, I think, be in a position that we garner some wide appeal, and that we obviously have messages that can convene the global childcare reform movement, but also that can be easily accessible for non-experts, non-practitioners. And that's our first step towards making sure that childcare reform becomes more prominent in this global SDGs discourse. To do that, we're going to be organizing a number of events. We call them policy dialogues. Dialogue because really the format is going to be a discussion between experts and on the various aspects of the links between childcare reform and sustainable development. Childcare reform as both a goal to strive to achieve, to ensure sustainable development, and also addressing the root causes of child institutionalizations as some issues that are completely enshrined in why the global system at the moment is not sustainable: poverty, social exclusion, discrimination, and so forth and so on. What we are thinking to do is to capitalize on these big SDGs moments that are organized by the United Nations mostly, and that really capture the attention of world leaders and the wider public around these key moments, like the Summit of the Future, like I've mentioned, the World Social Summit. There's going to be also in 2025 the International Conference of Financing Development. So these big high-level events, and organize our policy dialogues in the lead up to them. So trying to sort of jump on the buzz, on the discussions that are ongoing, to organize these meetings with wide appeal, open to all to attend. And what we'd like to do is to, for each of these policy dialogues, concentrate on one key aspect of the link between childcare reform and the Sustainable Development Goals. At the moment, we're thinking to go in the direction of following the logic of our 5 asks that I shared just before. So committing to social protection to all, for instance. That could be one of the key topics of one of the policy dialogues. How do we do that? What is known in academia about the important role of social protection in sustainable societies? Do we have some promising practices, for instance? Or another policy dialogue on how do we fund care reform at a global stage, and maybe invite a few different donors, aid agencies, and discuss this. So really have a bit of an overarching theme for each of the policy dialogues. As I've said, the why to us is very clear at the moment. The SDGs, which is the big development framework at global level, and you'll probably know that a lot of states, a lot of countries refer to the SDGs as part of their human development policies. The SDGs really don't have any place for childcare reform, children in institutions, children in alternative care. And we want to change that. Realistically speaking, the current SDGs framework is very well on its way, and we don't expect that it's going to massively change in the next 3 years. But we also know that at global level, policies take a lot of time to be adopted, to be negotiated, to be implemented, and there's going to be the start of negotiations for the next cycle very soon. The next cycle is expected to start in 2030, and we are hearing a little through the grapevine that negotiations should start in 2027. So really, it's a little bit of a long game here, and trying to set the stage, trying to make really evident why childcare reform has its place in the wider SDGs discussion, to make sure that we're in a good position to advocate for the next cycle as well. I think there's also a number of really interesting opportunities to engage at national level. As I've said, a lot of states refer to the SDGs, have their own goals to meet. We know that there's some reviews procedures of national progress on the SDGs. I'd love to hear if any of you or your organizations are engaging in these processes at national level. There's certainly a lot of potential. So that's a little bit the rationale behind the policy dialogue series. And I'll stop very shortly, but I want to say a few words on this first policy dialogue. Very characteristically, please ignore everything that I said before, because this first policy dialogue doesn't have just one overarching goal. It's a little bit of an introduction to the series. So it's trying to set the stage on why we're doing this, why it's so important in the context of the sustainable development conversations. The title is No Sustainable Development Without Global Childcare Reform. So really trying to make the link that there is not one without the other. Time to commit to a future without child institutionalization. Again, trying to sort of, how do I say, I don't want to say dog whistle, but recall the summit of the future looking policies that are going to be negotiated, adopted at this occasion. The event is going to be online. I think this is really the best format for how wide appeal we're trying to be. You're all very warmly invited. I did share some information on it on the platform itself, on the Global Collaborative platform, but I'll share the agenda and the link to register later in the chat. It's going to take place in a week's time on Monday, 16th of September. In the agenda, you'll see there's a number of different time zones, but for Central European time, it's 4 to 5 p.m. Just 1 hour, very short, and we're hoping to the point. So really some snappy interventions that make our case very compelling. We have some very, very exciting speakers. A lot of them will probably be familiar names. We've got our very own Stephen, Regional Advocacy Manager at Hope and Homes for Children for Africa. We have a representative of the European Union, which will come in from a bit of a funder perspective, explaining what the EU has done to support childcare reform. We have Chris, that's from Child Life Foundation. Sorry for the horrendous typo in Uganda. That will come in explaining a few of the key successes, advocacy successes that we've had in Africa, how we've really capitalized on the momentum and done some really interesting things in Africa for childcare reform. We have a member of academia. I'm very excited to have Marinus van Eijendorn, who is a very eminent researcher in our field. And we have Anju Pun, country director for Forget-Me-Nots in Nepal, that will also come in with a very practitioner-based experience, explaining to us that the work that they're doing, reuniting children with their families, and supporting childcare reform on the ground, and also their advocacy at national level. That's about it for me. So I've tried to explain a little bit the rationale, but also how we're going to kick off this series. It's a little bit of a trial. We're probably going to find a fit a little bit with this format. I anticipate that there's going to be quite a number of policy dialogue across the next year and possibly beyond. At the moment, we're really looking at basically from the Summit of the Future to the World Social Summit, September 2024 to November 2025. But if there is need, if there is capacity, we're certainly open to exploring expanding it beyond. And at the very least, in this current one-year cycle, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to have panelists from this very group. I'd love to explore when we plan the next ones, having other representatives of the group discuss their promising practices, their regional examples. And yes, I may look to, I don't know if Nolan's in the room. I don't really see speakers, but if you want to, yeah, sorry.
Mary, just to say, it'd be good to wrap up, and then I'm sure some people may have some questions, to give a chance to people to ask some questions if they have any, just because of time. But thank you.
Absolutely. So yeah, no, just looking to Nolan if there's anything that I've forgotten to complement, but that's it for me. Thank you, Clarence.
Thank you, Mary. Nolan, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think Marie, you covered it all brilliantly. I've just put in the chat the agenda and the registration.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mary, for this really helpful and comprehensive update on the whole process and the initiatives around advocacy as part of the Summit of the Future and beyond with the Social Summit. Seb, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes. Hi, Marie. I don't think we've met before. So first of all, hello, and this is amazing. Thank you so much for this update. It's really, really interesting and helpful. So first, thank you. I think I had two questions. Mainly one is, it's amazing that, you know, the kind of very intentional work and dialogues that you're doing related to the event in New York and beyond. I'm wondering, is Joining Forces, is that the right name? Yeah, the Joining Forces Alliance, because often they have been leading a lot of this work. So I was just curious and reflecting when you were presenting of whether they are doing anything, and are you linking your efforts? And I know it's not always easy, so recognizing that. So it was just more a question of curiosity of whether, you know, if they are doing something, and often they look at it much more broadly around child protection, and sometimes they you know, they kind of push back around specific issues and all that jazz and fun discussion. So just wanted to get to hear any thoughts on that. And the policy dialogue, how often are they happening, and how are you linking them with the Transforming Children Care kind of more quarterly platform. Fantastic that these are highlighted today and that you're highlighting on the website. I was just trying to kind of understand those linkages. And again, thank you. This is great.
Thank you very much, Seb. Very nice to see you and meet you in person. Really good questions on the Joining Forces group. We haven't contacted them as a group. I don't know if there's one single coordinator that would be able to join. We have been sort of our entry point in the New York Joining Forces group has been Save the Children's New York Advocacy Office that we've been put in touch with in the past few months. I don't believe they're going to do a joint event around the Summit of the Future. I know they've done a lot of joint advocacy ahead of the summit to influence the pact. But I don't think there's one single big event that they're doing. So I have shared the invitation on our event to that colleague in Save New York, encouraging her to share with this world, the New York based, so 6 NGOs, I think they are. I would really like to have the conversation on how we link the global care movement a lot more with this, so the big NGOs. I certainly don't have the answer just yet, because as you point out, they're very much looking at child protection as a whole. That I'm sure you'll know they have a lot to do with the violence against children portfolio. And when it comes to care, I don't really know that as a group they are aware and are doing too much on it. So I think at the time being, we've sort of just had some ad hoc discussions with them. And then regarding how the policy dialogue calendar is going to work, a lot of it is under construction at the moment. So I think we're really trying to have this big event, have it go well, run smoothly, and we'll cement a little bit more our calendar after. We can already see a number of key events in the UN calendar that we'll want to be associated with. So as I've said, the World Social Summit, the International Financing Development Conference. I think as a rule of thumb, we're hoping to have something every 3 months. That feels a bit realistic. When it comes to how to make sure that it also comes in our calendar within this group, I think we're trying to figure that out now. Certainly, we want to make sure to share some regular updates. I think last time we met, our plans weren't quite firmed up yet. So now we come in with a bit more concrete news. And on a personal level, I'd love to keep on giving updates on the platform during these calls and to sort of maybe be the point of liaison if some colleagues want to look at some initiatives around the SDGs. I think that's certainly something we can look into. Yeah, I hope I answer your question.
For sure. And again, just thank you. This is great and super clear. I'm just happy for us to chat more, if that helps, around brainstorming and learning from the past as well, because there were quite a bit of discussion dynamics in the past as well. So just to make sure that we learn from that, and happy to, only if that's helpful. If it's not, that's fine as well. And I'm just wondering, and this is maybe for Florence, and I know I'm taking too much time, so I will make it brief. And that's something maybe for a follow-up discussion is, for some of like specific policy advocacy efforts, like related to Ukraine, we kind of sometime came together as a task force or working group within the policy working group. And I'm just wondering if that might be something that Hope and Home might be open to consider and being, the chair of that. But that's just an idea, and idea maybe for you, Florence, and others to further discuss. So thank you. This is great.
Thank you. Anyone else has any question? I have one, actually, Mary, if I may. In terms of the messaging that you've identified, I know these have been worked out with a different audience in mind, as you explained. Are these set in stone, or is part of the idea around the work that's happening, the global policy dialogues and so on, to actually you know, bring in some other inputs in terms of how they're shaped and what the policy recommendations are?
Absolutely, very good question. Thanks, Florence. I think at the moment, this is an operational framework, so to speak. How do we structure our thoughts around the SDGs and our messaging? It's you know, I don't want to speak too fast, but I don't think it's final. I don't think it should be, because we are seeing the discussions around the SDGs evolve anyway. We also don't know what the next framework is going to be shaped like. It may not be 17 goals. It may be something very different. So no, I don't think it's final at all from an open homes perspective. And certainly, we're finalizing our thinking around the strategy. But what we've discussed is we'd like to have one big moment to close this initial part of the series. And for that, at this stage, we'll have some sort of a policy document that may be based on these 5 recommendations, may certainly evolve. And for that, I think we'll definitely want and need the inputs of our closest allied organizations. So yeah, so this is a start, certainly not the end, and I don't think it should be.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I see Caroline saying, is there a link you could share to those key messages?
Yes, I'll have to think, but we have it somewhere on our website. So I'll share that with you as soon as I find it.
Okay. Maybe you can share your slides as well after the call, because I think that will be helpful for people to have that as well. Thank you so much, Mary. Really appreciate you coming and updating and you know, bringing other actors into this. It's really important. So we look forward to continuing working with you and hearing from you. Let me go back. If there are no more questions on this, let me go back to the slides, if I can, for today, our agenda. Apologies. This is where my technology. Are you seeing the slides?
Yeah, we're seeing the whole screen.
Okay.
It's not on
Excellent.
slideshow. Yeah, now it's slideshow.
Okay. We were going to follow this with updates on the work that's happening around the Bogota Global Ministerial Conference in November, which we talked about at the last meeting, and a lot is happening on that. But I know Chris, I think he's still with us, wanted to give us an update, a regional update, but I also know that he's got to leave. And welcome, Becky, just noting that Becky as well has joined us. I need to leave. Chris, do you want to come in at this stage? Because I know you've got another meeting you need to go back to.
Yes, please, Florence. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hi, and greetings all. I hope you're well. Hello from an almost really thundery and rainy Kampala. So first of all, really excited to be taking part in the dialogue, the policy dialogue on childcare reform and SDGs. And I just want to plug as well and say, come and hear us speak passionately about this topic. So folks, I'm going to give you an update, and I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to send one to ahead of this meeting. It's been quite busy, but we want to make a commitment to attend the full meetings, Florence, and ensure that we are collaboratively adding value to the global policy work, but also receiving some support, as there are a number of challenges that we're experiencing. We have other forums we discuss these in, but I think this is probably the best forum for us to bring some of these challenges. Today, I'm going to stay focused on giving you all an update. So I'll start off with a reminder of our plans around the Africa advocacy work through the Africa Working Group on Children Without Parental Care. We needed to develop a theory of change, which we did, and there are some pending amendments. I'd love to share that with you. Marie was quite instrumental and worked very closely with us. So did Lumos, Caroline, and Railway Children, Catholic Relief Services, Changing the Way We Care, and a few other organizations as well. So we're really grateful to that, but we'd like to share that with you. The other piece was to organize a learning mission for the African Committee of Experts on the rights and the welfare of the child to 2 or 3 countries in Africa to learn a bit more about national care reform initiatives. And then the other was to strengthen the working group's governance and practice, which I will also mention a little bit, and that has also begun. We're really excited about the branding and governance exercise that's going on. So first and foremost, I'll tell you a bit about the learning mission. There was a learning mission organized to Rwanda and Kenya in partnership with UNICEF and host countries within the countries, Hope and Homes for Children in Rwanda, and in Kenya, Lumos, as well as Hope and Homes for Children. In both countries, but particularly in Kenya, there were quite a few other CSOs that attended the meetings and also talked about the work. Kenya was picked because of their policy and legislation and their recent strategy and care reform. The cabinet secretary, as most of you might know, there were no ministers in Kenya for a while, so cabinet secretaries were serving as the ministers, and the cabinet secretary in post was one that worked on the strategy and was really passionate and really engaged with the committee of experts. So there were two committee experts that attended. Honorable Ghislaine Roch Estan, he's from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he's a new committee expert, phenomenal guy, really, really passionate about childcare and childcare reform, child protection and childcare reform. And Honorable Anne Musiwa, who is the rapporteur for Children Without Parental Care. Excuse me. The purpose of the meeting was obviously to give them firsthand practice, firsthand understanding of how this work is done and delivered at a national level, and how UNICEF, government, and CSOs are working together to deliver on this initiative in both Rwanda and Kenya. They visited families, they visited transitioning children's homes or orphanages or institutions, but they also visited a number of organizations, particularly in Kenya and Rwanda, children with disabilities, organizations working with children with disabilities to provide additional services that prevent separation. There's a report that's also being compiled that will be presented at the 44th session in October. Grace Mwangi will attend that meeting and present with Honorable Anne Musiwa. As I mentioned, or I haven't yet, but this will also input into the general comment, which is the other aspect and a key and very important aspect that we're meant to be working on. We offered to fund part of the general comment, but there hasn't been a response from the Secretariat. We did input into the TORs and enabled and supported the development of them. The Secretariat and the African Committee of Experts put out a call for consultants, and we understand that that was closed and they have appointed a consultant. We do not know, however, who that consultant is. This is a concern and we're really kind of keen on following up. So Grace is speaking to the Secretariat. I'm speaking to Honorable Anne Musiwa. I also have a meeting tomorrow with Nicola from UNICEF Isaro, from UNICEF, to just discuss this as well and to just pick up on how we can have some support in understanding where the process is with the general comment. The general comment is a really important piece of document. We need to obviously have as much input globally into it. It needs to obviously be led by Africa, the continent, and by the evidence on the continent. But we're really keen that whatever comes out of it, it's something that we can use and can create a basis for African Union to influence the region towards care reform. I'll just speak about the branding and governance. We've appointed a consultant from Kenya and Uganda who are working on helping us brand, develop a brand, and will also connect to the governance. Interestingly, Marie and another colleague are also on that committee. I'm not on that committee. I'm on the branding side of the committee with a few other colleagues. So we are really keen, as I said, to develop a really clear message and brand about what the Africa Working Group on Children Without Parental Care is. It is very possible that we might drop the name working group because we are a working group that supports the African Committee of Experts, but really we support the rapporteur for Children Without Parental Care. So there isn't an official sort of MOU, but the Secretariat has recognized us. And because Lumos, our Secretariat, has now got observer status, we've managed to apply for that. They have recognized us and will be issuing an MOU for us to ensure that we have a relationship with the Secretariat. That's the African Committee of Experts. Hope and Homes for Children from Rwanda has also applied for the observer status, and Child's Eye Uganda has also applied for its observer status. Child's Eye works with an observer status through the Uganda Children's Rights NGO network. So we have a seat on a committee on care reform there, so we're able to sit in, and that's how it's happened before. So when I went to the 43rd session and the 42nd session as an observer, I did that on my seat with UCRNN. We really want to see more countries in Africa speak about their journey at the African Union. So Honorable Musiwa is providing an opportunity, and that's the other reason Grace is going. So Ghana, we're also keen to see not just Rwanda, but South Africa. And now we will see Zambia and Malawi also represented and speaking at the African Union. We also are aware that Ethiopia will speak a bit about the evidence practice around efforts towards alternative care, family-based alternative care, and obviously working towards care reform. We also have a promising practice document, and this will be my last update, Florence. I'll switch my camera back on again. I was worried it would just come off. We also have a promising practice document, which was initially called a solutions book, but we consulted with a number of folks, BCN, Child Frontiers, through Emily, and also Nicola, UNICEF, who all came back with some guidance and advice about thinking of these documentations as promising practice. I want to stress that we're not creating another platform, and we're not creating new documents that will exist anywhere else. The promising practice is documentation from across the region. We're hoping to work in partnership with BCN and Child Frontiers to really do this properly and link the promising practice in countries to already existing evidence on the BCN network or the ASARA platform. Now, we've decided to take a big step back because we felt it was too ambitious to document large pieces of promising practice. So what we're going to have is profiles of countries and organizations working towards childcare reform or improved practices around family-based care for children. So we are hoping to document 23 organizations to start with, and we have all that information with us. And then what we intend to do is to start to think about how we can look at their practice. And if there are people who are keen to go deeper and do some research pieces, either on their own or in partnership with others, we can promote that. So all this will originally sit on the Children Without Parental Care website. So you'll be able to look at all these organizations, but there'll be links to all these other platforms, just so that we make sure that it's collaborative and that the information is linked on various platforms as well. Then my last update is there was a visit by the Tanzanian government and the minister responsible for child welfare to Uganda. She went on a 3-day visit with colleagues in her department. So it was senior government officers. And that visit was also organized in partnership with UNICEF in Tanzania and UNICEF in Uganda. They were very well received by the Ugandan government, who spoke really passionately about their journey. And the civil servants spoke very clearly about the challenges and ensuring that Tanzania has thought about all these things. We spoke very much about our draft policies and our passion and our vision to kind of complete those. They also visited transitions organizations, orphanages, as well as transitioning orphanages. They saw foster care pilots, they saw peer parenting programs, and quite a few others across different organizations as well. And that was facilitated in partnership with Child's Eye and Railway Children in Tanzania. And both organizations worked through their NGO networks for this to happen. That collaboration is going to continue, and it will now become regional. So the idea is that the different government offices will have their calls or the mentorship calls. I'm hoping to speak. I'm meeting tomorrow with Nicola and Emily from Child Frontiers to kind of pass this on to them so that they can follow up and see how we can build that. We're going to document all these trips for learning and hopefully come back in 3 and 6 months to just see what developments have happened. We're also linking all this work to the transition practice training that's happened in some of the different countries. So we've mentioned that we have coaches, trainers, and mentors in those countries who can work with governments around this, and the governments have their names to work with them as well. Thanks, Florence. I think that's my update, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? We really appreciate you making the time as well, knowing that you had a lot of meetings going on today. I have one question, if I may. And oh, sorry, Caroline, please go ahead.
Sorry, I couldn't find the raise hand button quick enough. It was just around the general comment, Chris. I know you said you're quite in the dark about a lot of the procurement of the consultant. I just wondered if there's any further updates on the timeline. Is there a deadline for when the general comment needs to be done? Because I know it's sort of already in motion because they've approved that they're going to do one. So I don't know. I just wondered if you're aware of that. Anything about that. Thanks.
Thanks, Caroline. Yes, at the 42nd and 43rd session, we absolutely, all of us here celebrated the advocacy around the general comment, and we were very surprised, but also happy that the committee was happy to approve that. So we have been told that they have to present something at this next session in October. So I'm very concerned. There has been no feedback, and during the visit, so I wasn't on the learning mission visit, sadly, but what Grace and Stephen have given me as an update is that during the visit, Honorable Musiwa said that the consultants are meant to present something. We were very clearly assured that the working group would be involved. It has to be, as the CSOs in the region. So I'm quite surprised, which is why I would like to ask Nicola tomorrow to find out a bit more for us. Sadly, Caroline, this is not a surprise. This happens. You kind of have to email every day to find out what's happening, and we have done a lot of that. So I was quite surprised.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Just following on that, Chris, as you said, the rapporteur is Honorable Musiwa, and she's not able to share an update on this in terms of who the consultant are? Yeah.
No, surprisingly, neither is she, because the Secretariat is leading this. Now, she's meant to approve anything that comes out. So that's why we kind of contacted her, and almost every week for the last couple of weeks, and she kept saying, I've tried to contact the Secretariat. Honorable Musiwa is traveling. She's, I think, just come back from New Zealand. So we are, I am concerned, is what I will say.
Thank you. That's helpful to know, definitely. And yeah, I'll share your concern for sure, particularly around the lack of transparency around the process and the lack of clarity around the information and the content. One thing, I know you probably have to go, Chris, so I just wanted to mention, Caroline, you also pulled out the regional webinar, which is happening for Africa in relation to the VAC conference. So I just wanted to highlight that there is that webinar, which thankfully I'm seeing your hand up, so that means you know about it, and that is part of the series of national regional consultations that are happening. There actually only are, as far as we know, 2 regional consultations, this one, and then one in Europe that's supposed to take place, although we're still trying to find out exactly whether it's happening and when. But the African regional consultation, which is bringing together actors around that violence, global ministerial meeting, is taking place very soon. I think it's the 16th, isn't it, Caroline?
It's on Thursday.
On Thursday.
On the 12th.
Yeah. On the 12th, exactly. So just want to make sure that you're aware of it, and that colleagues in the region that are working on care and care reform are there to contribute, because as we know, one of the big goal and one of the challenges is to ensure that violence in the context of care, whether as a driver of children into alternative care or as a reality for hundreds of thousands of children in alternative care, as well as a solution for children who face violence, when we talk about good quality family-based care, is actually not really on the agenda. So it's our big goal as part of, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the initiative around the violence against children working group, is to ensure that we bring that to the agenda. So I would encourage colleagues and partners. I'm glad, Chris, you're involved that have partners in the region to make sure that you contribute to this consultations, because that's also what's shaping the agenda for Bogota. So thank you so much for that. Anything else before we actually move to the next item, which is the work around the working group and the violence ministerial conference? Okay. So let me share again my screen. Oops, wrong screen. Where is my screen? I don't know anymore. Sorry, I have to get out of, there we go. Hopefully this is going to work. So in terms of, we updated colleagues in the last 2 meetings. I hope you're seeing the agenda slide again.
Yes, we are.
Great. Okay. So we updated in the last couple of meetings of this working group, and many of you are participating. We have a working group of agencies that are actively working on bringing this interface between violence and care as part of this global ministerial conference on ending violence against children that is taking place. It's the first global ministerial conference, ministerial level conference that is taking place in Bogota on the 7th and 8th of November. And the working group has been, it's chaired by Lumos and BCN. Many of you, as I said, are involved in this. And it's been working on a number of initiatives to influence that global ministerial conference, that agenda, and ensure that this interface between violence and care is integrated to the extent possible. But the aim of these initiatives actually go well beyond the actual conference, is ensuring that there is better integration to address violence against children in the context of care as part of efforts post the ministerial conference. This conference is a huge opportunity for actors globally working around ending violence against children, including in the context of the SDG, which Mary spoke about, so the post-SDG agenda. There is a absolute need of integrating children's care and the interface with violence more systematically in that implementation agenda. The conference aims as well to bring in new commitment, refreshed commitment from countries, including pathfinding countries that have committed to ending violence against children under the SDGs, and bringing new countries into these commitments, and in some ways making fresh commitments on moving forward with their national plans, with their pledges, and bringing new commitments to that, as well as new funding to that. So the conference aim is bringing countries across the globe at that level to reconfirm their commitment to ending violence against children, to make new commitments, to identify fundings, to make pledges, both in terms of donors, but also in terms of changes that are needed to actually accelerate ending violence against children. From our perspective, we're looking at how we can ensure that as part of these commitments, both in the conference, but importantly, the post-conference, there is a, the care agenda and the addressing the care reform agenda as well is integrated better into those efforts. And similarly, that the care reform sector actually integrate and address violence against children in partnership with actors working on this in a more systematic way, because we've also been in our own silos to some extent. So some of the things that the working group has been working on, which we mentioned, we're going to have a satellite event that is going to be highlighting precisely what I just mentioned in relation to the interface between back and care. It's taking place on the 6th of November. And I'm going to end, sorry, I'm going to end sharing, because it's very difficult to talk without seeing people. So apologies, I need to see at least some of you, so I know that I'm not talking to myself, which I often do. So we're going to have the satellite event. We have a fantastic panel of actors that are coming in, starting with Najat, the Special Representative on Violence Against Children, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General, is going to be one of our key speakers. We're going to have the minister from Sweden. Sweden is one of the co-organizer of the conference and one of the countries that has made significant commitment around ending violence against children, including child sexual abuse. And they are going to also speak about their own learning, including some of the challenges they've had with addressing violence in Sweden and in the context of care specifically, and which is a big area for them as well. We will have Michael Londono, who is the director of the Colombian Network of Care Leavers, who's going to be there representing not only the Colombian care leavers, but the Latin American care leavers as well. We've made it clear that care experience advocates and leaders need to be at the forefront of this discussion and the recommendation, and there will be. And then we will have Honorable Musiwa, which Chris mentioned, who is the Special Rapporteur on children without parental care of the African Committee of Experts on the welfare and rights of the child. And so she's going to be there as well, speaking precisely about efforts in the region. So we're going to have a first panel, which is, and we're discussing as part of the working group a second country government champion to also speak of care reform and addressing violence as part of that. And there's still discussion on confirming, because a lot of that conference is still, even though it's in November, a lot of that is still very much being determined. But in terms of the satellite event, that's the first part. There's a second part. We're going to have deep dive discussion around some of these aspects and bringing other actors to speak to the practice, to speak in particular to the solutions and the intervention. What is it that we want to recommend to actors, to this community, to governments in particular, but not only them, to donors working around addressing violence against children, to really bring in children without parental care, children who are in alternative care, and addressing care reform as part of that agenda. The reason I'm mentioning this is as we are working as a working group to finalize, we are still in the process of determining exactly who are going to be on those panels, who's going to speak about what. So we want to also, again, invite you, if you are going to Bogota, or if you have partners that are going to Bogota, if you know of or you have particular learning practice that you want to share, this is the time for you to flag it to us so that we can make sure to integrate them. And potentially, if you have partners that are working, they could also be part of this panel. They're certainly invited to the satellite event. So this is going to be one of the big events. The second also important opportunity is that we are developing as a working group, we call it a thematic brief. It links to some extent to the thematic brief that the Transforming Children's Care has been developing, but it may be actually it's going to be looking potentially at being slightly different in format and so on. But the aim is the same, which is to actually bring in our key evidence and our key recommendation in terms of better integration, better addressing violence against children in the context of care. What does that look like and what does it mean? And so that's another, we have hired a consultant, which some of you may know, Lori Perkovich, who has a huge experience, both in terms of the violence against children work that she's done before, but also in terms of the work that we've done, for example, around the UNGA resolution. And she started work on this thematic brief. The opportunity there is, if you want to input into this brief, please join the working group. But also, if you don't have time necessarily, you don't have the bandwidth to do this, but you want to provide good practice examples from your partners, there are going to be case studies that are going to illustrate precisely what are some of the intervention, what are some of the approaches that actually have been effective at addressing violence for this in the context of care and alternative care. And so it's a call on you also to reach out to us and say, we're really keen. Laurie's finishing some guidelines on terms of just very brief, what do we want in a case study? So we're going to be sharing this with you. If you have partners and so on that can contribute some really important learning and illustration of country level work or local level work that address, we really would love to hear from you. This is an opportunity for us as a community to come in and showcase why and how it's being done. So that's something that I wanted to mention. And then probably I should have started with this, but one of the real opportunity, which some of you will be aware, are the national and the regional, although mostly they are national preparatory sessions. So they've started already in some context. These national preparatory consultation, I'm going to hand over to Caroline to talk about this, but are really the critical way for countries to make their commitment, to make their pledge at the national level. And that's what they're going to be taking at the Bogota level. So if we haven't managed to successfully bring in the intersection between care and violence at the national level, it's going to be very difficult to do this in Bogota, because that's really where. Caroline, please, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you. And I was just replying to several in the chat, but I've also just posted what's on the website as the kind of the latest agenda that we had shared, and which is responding to Seb's question about how many government champions are envisaging, which I put is 2. That's right, isn't it, Florence? Hope that I answered that correctly. Yeah,
Two in terms of the main panel, yeah. Sorry, just the 2 in terms of the plenary panel.
Yeah.
Apologies for typing away. Yeah, I know that I've been kind of having regular conversation with different organizations, particularly UNICEF Kenya, UNICEF Rwanda, and that have highlighted interests of the government counterpart. But I was just wondering, but I'm sure, you know, there's many others, and I know you want to get good representation across the globe. So I was just wondering, any thought on that? Thank you.
In terms of the plenary, you mean, in terms of the second, sorry, I'm like typing while speaking to you, but in terms of the other government champion?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so right now the discussion, first of all, it's been confirming who's coming, because, you know, the deadline for countries to confirm who's coming was the 30th of August. So they, you know, we got an update in, I think it was like the 25th of August of countries that are coming. There was still some that hadn't responded, but I think we will get a full list later on. But so the country at the moment that we're kind of looking at is probably Kenya. But that's still in discussion, because it's going to depend. It's not just which country is coming, but which representative, because it's really important that the government representative who comes to Bogota can speak to the issue well. Because you're going to have countries that are represented by their health minister, you're going to have those that are represented by the education minister, sometimes they will have their social policy people, or minister, but not always. So that's also what we're juggling at the moment, making sure that we've got the right. But the last confirmation is there is going to be very high level representation from Kenya at the Bogota conference, and including from, I think it's the permanent secretary. I'm sure you can correct me, Caroline.
Yeah, it's the permanent secretary. He's the one that would be an excellent speaker on this issue. So we're hoping. I think it wasn't 100% confirmed that he was coming yet, though. But I'm going to see Grace tomorrow, so that will be the top thing on our agenda. So
now,
in person, which is nice.
This being said, just to add, sorry, Karen, before you go in, just to add, the opportunity of government involvement is not just at the main plenary panel; it's as well on the second half of the satellite event. So we're really keen to also have government representative speaking to that. So it's not just to there's space for others.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah. Right. So just to, unless there's any more questions on that, if I can move on to the national preparatory sessions. So I'm just conscious of time, so we've only got 20 minutes left. So I'll very quickly, we have talked about this before, but essentially, as Florence was saying, you know, the purpose of this conference is not just to have a big global conference and a big global declaration about violence against children. It's for countries to make commitments to do concrete things, and they will be different depending on different countries. And then also the follow-up from the event is going to happen in countries. So really the most important work is what happens at the national level in terms of leading up to the conference, what countries agree that they're going to commit to, and then in terms of following up on those commitments. So we've been, obviously, as a group of organizations, we touch on several different countries. So we've been thinking about ways that we can help to support one another in kind of engaging effectively with to make sure that care reform is integrated into these discussions at the national level. One of the things that we've done is prepared a briefing that pulls out some of these some of those key links that Florence was already mentioning, so I won't repeat them, and some recommendations for governments. And then also has a second section which has recommendations for how to engage with the national preparatory sessions and what's expected of them, so how you can kind of approach that with the governments. I will share that with, I'm happy to share that with this group after this meeting. And yeah, it's been, I think it's already been shared in the back and care group, and if it hasn't, we can share that again. It's definitely in the folder, but I think we can share it again, perhaps. So yes, so that's, so there's sort of some ready material there, but it would also, and also just to flag, I can't remember if you already mentioned this. Oh, we mentioned it because Chris was leaving, yes, that there are some regional consultations happening as well, but that we know so little about them, and they're about to happen. So I don't know how consultative they're going to be. It's sort of like a webinar, one on Europe, one on Africa, and actually I just found out that there was one that happened in Geneva today. It was the launch of a report. I don't know if anyone else attended that or was aware of it, but that just I didn't know much about that, but that just happened today. So there's a few different kind of events happening, but those are the two that we're aware of that are regional webinars, but we don't really know much about the structure or how consultative it's going to be. And it's one webinar for an entire continent, so it can't be that consultative. And so what we wanted also to ask now is, if we have a little bit of time, if we have maybe just a few minutes, if anybody's aware of things that are happening at the national level, countries that their organisations work in or work with, if anyone has any updates. I know, for example, just a brief update that I can give on Kenya. I know Grace isn't here, but it's been quite consultative. There is a working group of civil society. They've basically been asked to review lots of commitments and documents that Kenya has made in the past and to propose new commitments. So it seems to be there's a real opportunity for civil society engagement, and I know that's going to vary in different countries. In Moldova, the government was much less proactive on it, and it seems like it's more UNICEF who's pushing, and but that civil society is involved through that. So yeah, it's different in different countries. But if anyone has any updates, that would be great to hear. Oh, great. Thank you, Amanda. So Plan for Every Child already updated the spreadsheet. That's great. Thank you.
Yes, we have a spreadsheet. I think we shared it last time, but we're more than happy to share it again with the group, because we know we all have so many different folders, where we are basically updating and putting information about what we find out, what's happening, what are the changes, etc., including what the working group is doing. So happy to share that again with you.
Do you want me to come in on the
yeah, just before, I was wondering whether there was just to what Caroline, colleagues in Asia. Are you Lina? I see you're here. I think Sangeeta is here or was here. Do you know whether anything is happening in India in terms of national consultation? Not wanting to put you on the spot, actually.
Hi, Florence, if I can go.
Please.
In India, I think there are very interesting developments that we've seen in the recent past. One is the setting up of a consortium, which is called, very beautiful name that has been given. It's called Children and Families Together, CAFT, CAFT. It's a nice consortium that Hope and Homes also is leading and supporting. And there are other partner organizations. And only a few weeks back, we've had a very nice consultation, a discussion where, the entire focus is on bringing the disability sector and the care reform sector together, because it was realized that there's a, gap somewhere. The two spaces are working in silos, and it'll be nice to see some conversations happening. In India, we know there are many children still in institutional care just because they have disabilities. And in the institutional care, it seems to get further aggravated. That's the first update. And the second update is that, again, from a disability perspective, UNICEF in India and the judiciary have been working very closely. And I think UNICEF has also published a case study on this where, the idea was to bring the judiciary to the spotlight and let them lead. The high courts and the Supreme Courts in the country have set up juvenile justice committees. And this year, the High Court committees have all had their own consultations at the state levels. The focus was again on children with disabilities. And now the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the country, is planning with UNICEF a national consultation on children with disabilities in care reform context. And that I think UNICEF also shared at the CAF meeting last time that a manifesto is being developed with children's voices being included in that manifesto, which then gets presented to the Supreme Court and gets discussed at the national consultation.
Thank you, Lina.
And I think Nolan also is here, and we are also, as part of the BICON, we are also trying to put together a roundtable, because I'm sure all of you know, we've completed 1 year since the last BICON, which is the 5th one, happened in person in Kathmandu. So we are now trying to put together our heads and deliver a virtual roundtable with the government and policy makers joining us, and just take stock of what's happened in the last 1 year, where are we, and how do we plan and go forward for the next BICON that is most likely to happen in 2025 or 26. So
Thank
Nolan, to correct me on the BICON thing if needed.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Lina. No, you did it perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. Two people. I see Sev, you can provide a bit of light on the vacant care element in India. And then Amanda, I see you had your hand up.
Yes, hi. I don't have a huge amount, but I can definitely, I did bring it up. I was just in India last week, and I met with UNICEF colleagues at the head office, and I did ask about that question specifically and mentioned the VAC care reform satellite, which they were super interested in. So I think they were still trying to find out who was joining from the government. I think they were having similar challenges as the other countries. But what I can offer is loop you in directly with Soledad, Vatana, and Prabhat, who I was linking with, and they can provide you more the latest and greatest on that.
Perfect. Thank you, Seb. That's really helpful.
Sorry, Florence, maybe this is more relevant to the meeting when we had specifically on it, but what struck me is, I think you're probably all aware of the report that came out in New Zealand about the levels of abuses that have happened within institutions and I just sort of think this is so topical that I wonder if that's something that we should be really working through and following through, because it'll be on everybody's mind. We've got a group of organisations in New Zealand that are responding to it. So if that's particularly a group of care leavers who are responding to what's come out of the report. So if that's a helpful input, let me know and we can see how we can help on that. Okay. That would be fantastic, Amanda. Yeah, it's very, very helpful. Thank you. Sorry, Becky, I cut you off. Becky, another big part of the violence, the conference as well, is as part of the response is the focus on child protection system strengthening. So Becky, over to you.
And I think the last time that we met, I talked through sort of what was included in this call to action. We're now renaming it to a framework for action or something like that on child protection systems, because there is a kind of an outcome document from the conference that is going to be a call to action. So we wanted to make it sure that it was kind of complementary. But I just shared that on the Transforming Children's Care, and we certainly do, exactly, I tried to explain exactly what changes were made. We did include care reform. We did include sort of really trying to link that. So we would love endorsements. We're trying to get endorsements from NGOs, but also from government. And I think UNICEF is leading the government endorsements, but we're trying to see that it's complementary again to, governments also endorsing this outcome statement, but I'm hoping those will be seen as complementary. So please do look at it. And if you are interested in endorsing, send us your logo. Allison from our advocacy team is kind of collating all of that. So that will be launched at the conference itself at a high-level panel looking at child protection systems. And we're also trying to have a side event together with the SRSG VAC office looking at the connections between pathfinding countries and strengthening child protection systems. And I think that that would be an interesting kind of connection. Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Margot. So please do let us know. We'd love for your endorsements. We're not going to format it and kind of send it out until the event, but we're hoping that the language can also be used for any of the, the preparatory sessions that are happening. Does anyone have questions for me on that?
By when do you need the endorsements, Rebecca?
I mean, it's rolling. So if you have a sign-off process, start. But again, we're not going to publish it until November, so we need that before it gets published. And we're trying to have a mixture of like just figuring out how many. Is it logos? Is it names? How do we make it so that lots of people can be connected to it, but not have it be 12 pages of endorsements? But yeah, the sooner, go through your process and let us know when you're ready. And yeah, Nolan.
Yeah, I think it's great, and we'll be happy to endorse from Open Homes. In terms of the government level endorsement, obviously we don't want, if UNICEF are leading on that, we don't want to step in and muddy the water. Is there a way of knowing which countries you've already got or which ones they've got?
We're meeting with UNICEF on Friday. I know that they are really approaching Sweden, but they haven't said anything about the UK. So, if there are countries that you think you have strong connections with, let us know, and maybe we can connect the dots and just sort of make sure the region, they've gone through their regional UNICEF reps. But I know that in some countries we have stronger relationships with government officials, et cetera. So I'm assuming it's just a coordination, leveraging kind of, but they would love UK endorsement if that is at all possible. Yeah.
It might be possible. We're in touch with them about some other things at the moment, so we could.
Okay, brilliant. I'll bring that up and just say, Open Homes would be interested in coordinating on that. Okay, great.
No worries.
Thank you, colleagues. I think we've covered everything on the Bogota conference. And just to say the obvious, it's a huge opportunity, not just for better integration of children in care or children at risk of going into care into the global agenda, but of course it links directly to the SDG and the post-SDG agenda that Mary talked about, because ending violence against children being one of the key objective. It is one of the goals, and one of the challenge we've had is to integrate children's care reform as part of that agenda. So it's really critical, and it's an exciting opportunity. So please do share with us if you have, again, case studies. If you're interested in joining the working group, join the working group. If you don't have the bandwidth, that's absolutely fine. There are ways. If you have, like Amanda pointed out, you're working with partners that are addressing and working on advocacy, on research around specific aspect of violence in the context of care. This is going to be a big topic, so we can, bring those actors. We still are looking at, if you know people who are going to Bogota and that are or should be going to Bogota, let us know. We don't have a huge amount of a budget or so on, but we are looking at, making sure that we have representation of the, diverse representation and of practice as well as policy change. Nolan, I think you've got your hand up again.
Sorry, it's a legacy hand.
Oh, sorry. Okay, now we're conscious about time. We had a couple of other things on our agenda. One of which, and I'm going to forget what it is because I'm not looking at it right now, because if I put it in, then I'm never going to be able to get out of it. One of it was, as you know, we've had these task forces that have been working on thematic brief, and we've had 2 published. We've got a number of others that are being finalized. We posted yesterday that the task force on the social service workforce strengthening and care reform and its role as part of care reform thematic briefs has been finalized by the task force. It's gone through very, very comprehensive discussions, inputs, and consultation. The process is that now it goes to the Global Policy and Advocacy Working Group for a final kind of review. As you'll see from the message we've given and the guidance we've shared on this, we're not at this stage a task force, and no one wants to start renegotiating everything. They literally have spent you know, months, if not a year, doing this work. It's really important, bringing all that expertise and knowledge on as part of the group. But it is the place to look at where there are issues where there might be significant disagreement. And if there are any disagreements, a policy disagreement or key issues which you think is terribly missing, then it's an opportunity for the working group to flag that, and then there can be discussion with the task force conveners about whether that can be addressed as part of the finalized. It's a short period of time because at this stage we really need to just be able to move forward. So we're really looking at those red lines. So please have a look at it. I think we've given the date of the 20th as the deadline for providing comments by the working group. After that, you know, any comments provided will be either integrated or there will be discussion if it can't be with those who've made the comments, and then it will be approved and published as the last two have been published. So there is also another one on family strengthening, which is approaching that stage. It's not quite there yet, but which will be shortly finalized. It's gone into a final draft that is now being into a final stage of consultation with the task force on that, and then it will come to the Global Policy and Advocacy Working Group probably towards the end of this month. So I just wanted to flag this. And there's a couple of others that are still in the wings. So just to let you know, please do have a look at that. Otherwise, Caroline, I see you.
Sorry, I just wanted to come in because we only did one regional update in the end. It was just Chris.
Oh, true.
I know Mariana's here. I wondered if
sorry. We've only got 5 minutes. I don't think it's going to be possible, I'm afraid. I mean, unless Mariana, you have really a very, very big, you know, tiny bullet point, because we are 5 minutes now to ending this and we still have a couple of things. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for this day. I just wanted to be at least this short time with you. Yes, Florence, I have only two progress updates for Latin America and the Caribbean. The first one is that Buenos Aires is going to be the host of the first INTRAC meeting, the Global Researchers Network on Transition from Care to Independent Living. That is going to happen on September 23rd and September 24th. There will be an international seminar on transitional housing solutions. So we're expecting most of the researchers in the global network to be here, fortunately. And Latin American chapter of researchers will introduce the progress in terms of transition in Latin America and the region. And secondly, as related to back to, I believe you've talked about this already. Yeah. The Hub is preparing a preliminary webinar to spread the word around the back parallel event. And we are also preparing the young person who is going to be, who was selected, Hector, as part of the youth committee from the Latin American Network to participate in the meeting of ministries itself. So those are the two pieces of information that I had to share with you. Thank you,
Mariana.
Apologies for joining late, sorry.
No, but it's really helpful and we're glad you're here. So thank you for joining. Couple of minor updates, but nonetheless important, just flagging that the report of the independent experts on the rights of persons with albinism to the General Assembly has been published, and it is actually focused on the right to family life. So it's a really important report. We encourage you, we put it in our newsletter, it's on our website as well. It's in multiple languages. We encourage you to read it. It's an important report that's looking at a very challenging issue of alternative care, the use of alternative care for children who are at dire risk for their lives, and the complexity of that. So of securing their safety while not detaining them and institutionalizing them. So it's a really important issue. The independent experts and with the help of Martin Punax did a great job. So we would encourage you to have a look at that. Becky, I don't think we're going to have time, unless you're very quick to talk about, but Save the Children has, I know, and some of you may have also did a submission in relation to the CRC Committee General Comment 27 that's forthcoming on access to justice and effective remedies. This is one of the things we flagged earlier. We all wished we'd had more time and bandwidth to do some work on that. But I know Save the Children has done, I don't know, Becky, whether you want to add anything, but has done a submission, but it is an important general comment that relates to, of course, care.
I can upload it on, at least Save the Children's response, but yeah, and I'll upload a little bit more about how we could potentially engage on it, because I think there was more that we could have done, and it's a real shame because access to justice and care are really, it's that whole alternatives to detention. There's quite a lot around that I think we should be saying a lot more about, and a real interest for organizations who work on this issue for us to be more engaged and involved, but we just, I think we missed an opportunity there, but I'll share it on the Transforming Children's Care. Great.
Thank you, Becky. And then one final little piece of news, which I only received yesterday, but it's quite interesting. The government of Turkey is launching an initiative as a kind of side initiative of the First Lady, the government of Turkey, with partnership with UNICEF around foster care. And they are going to have an event here in New York on the 25th of September. They've asked us to let the community know if you're going to be in New York, or if you're interested in finding out more, let me know, and we can share some of the documents. But it seems that they're looking at it from a global perspective. I know very little about the initiative, but it sounds as if the First Lady and other First Ladies or partners of government ministers and so on, they're building a coalition. Yes, I know, Amanda. I see. My first was like, oh God, here we go again. But nonetheless, they framed it very much in terms of recognizing the importance of foster care, family-based care, and the need of having children and building foster care. So it sounds like an interesting initiative. We'll find out more about it, but just wanting to, because it's a global initiative, not just a Turkey initiative. So if you are in New York on the 25th of September and want to attend and find out, let me know. And I think that's it. I think we've run through. Thank you so much for joining. Apologies if we have run out of time and there were things you wanted to add, but it's really an important opportunity, this group, and we encourage you to put your updates as well to the group. You don't have to wait for the meeting, because it's really the way we actually understand what's happening and how we can leverage each other. And so really excited to have you here, and we will update you again. And thank again to Mary for these great updates on the Summit of the Future, and look forward to speaking with you soon again.
Thank you, chairs. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Florence.
Bye.
Okay, bye.